and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us. You know, Brian, if you want to have a successful crop, you have to focus on a lot more than just nitrogen.
What?
And one of the biggest things that farmers need to work with on their farm is phosphorus. From understanding the soil test to picking the right times and placement for phosphorus application, we'll discuss all that today.
Well, you know, that phosphorus thing, Darren, is important, but if you don't have good drainage on your farm, I don't care what you do, you're not going to raise a good crop. We're going to discuss farm drainage today.
And we've got a tricky to control weed of the week that we're going to talk about today. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
One of the most important technological advances on the farms in recent years is the advent of the yield map, Darren. I mean, yield maps are awesome. They're in most combines now, where they're actually recording yield data as you go along in the field, and also moisture, plus elevation. So you can make topography maps, you can make moisture maps, yield maps. It's awesome.
Well, here's where I think it's really interesting, Brian. We were over in the Ukraine a few years back, and farmers were trying to farm 25,000 acre tracts of land and do everything the same on every single acre. And they were looking at us wondering, well, man, isn't that a big waste of time doing something a little different on this part of the field versus that part of the field? And we said, no. You know, this is where the yield monitor comes into play. You look at that part of the field and you see, wow, I'm getting 200 bushel of corn here per acre, but on this part of the field, I'm only getting 120.
Yeah,
What's the difference?
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. All this is going to do is tell you where the yield is at. Now it's up to the farmer to try to figure out why. But nevertheless, it's nice just having the data, because before farmers would see, oh yeah, there's some difference in yield and that kind of thing. Now they have it concrete. And if you start talking about 200 bushel corn versus 80 bushel corn, that's 120 bushels times, let's call it even $7 corn. You know, you're talking $800 an acre. Do you think you could make some modifications for $800 an acre? Yeah, I think I could.
Well, here's the problem though, Brian, is it's real easy to make this yield map now with the technology we've got, but what are you going to do with it? If it's just a pretty picture that sits on the kitchen table all winter, well, that doesn't do anybody any good. Farmers still have to take that data and try and figure out what's going on, whether that's by taking soil samples to follow up why those areas are different, or planting the next crop and taking plant tissue analysis, where they actually take leaves off the crop during the growing season to see what the differences are in those areas. Either way, those things have to be addressed, but it all starts with having some good data from that yield monitor.
Now, let's say that you're concerned about the environment and you say, boy, I want to make sure these farmers aren't over applying fertilizer. You know, farmers are using these yield maps now to see what kind of yield potential they have in their field. And if, let's say, over the last 5 years, consistently there are areas of the field yielding a lot less, well, now with yield maps, they can use that, they can put it into a computer program, and they can actually have fertilizer applied at lower rates in those poor yielding areas of the field. So it saves the farmer money, it's better for the environment, and I mean, it's just an overall good thing for everybody. So how can you beat that?
Well, the other thing it does is it lets farmers pick better hybrids. They can find out, wow, this hybrid does good in this soil type, but when we got into this other soil type out in the field, it didn't succeed. Now we can pick a better hybrid for that particular field and raise more food for everybody.
And it might not just be hybrid, it might also be population. So in those poor areas of the field, if the farmer had a lower plant population, in other words, if he had 20,000 plants per acre instead of 30,000 plants per acre, maybe those 20,000 plants would have had enough food to survive in that poor soil and everything, and they would have had more yield. I mean, there are a lot of ways to look at this thing.
Any way you look at it, the yield monitor has been just a tremendous invention for agriculture, and I'm glad that most farmers across the country are now using that, and they're mapping out their fields to see that there are some differences in the field that they can manage for better productivity going forward.
Well, one of those differences that could show up in the field is if you have a wild outbreak of our weed of the week. We'll tell you what it is and how to control it coming up later in the show.
Case IH set the standard for improving power and fuel economy with SCR technology, while others were still trying to decide what the standard was. Only efficient power from Case IH is proven in the field 10,000 times over. And you'll find it in all our high horsepower equipment, from tractors to combines to sprayers. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
To learn more about how you can be ready with the proven leader, visit caseih.com/efficient power.
Everything is better to the power of Nutrisphere N. Proven Proven to shield against leaching, volatilization, and denitrification, Nutrisphere Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager helps you maximize the efficiency of your nitrogen applications. In fact, research shows that in 184 corn trials, Nutrisphere increases yields by an average of 13.2 bushels per acre. Do the math for yourself. Contact your local fertilizer dealer today and take your operation to the power of Nutrisphere.
Back in 1966, Advanced Drainage Systems, Inc. was the first company to start manufacturing plastic agricultural drainage pipe in the United States. And today, ADS continues our leadership with superior pipe production and service capabilities. Our roots are firmly entrenched in the agriculture industry, and we're committed to helping farmers grow their business. With 54 manufacturing plants and 24 distribution yards throughout the world, you can count on ADS and our green striped pipe to be there when you need us. Advanced Drainage Systems, the green striped pipe you can count on.
Hey Brian, it's Farm Guy.
What brings you to our farm?
I watch Ag PhD every week and know that you guys do a lot of field testing.
We test a lot of products here, and when something works, we use it on our farm.
Oh, like agriculture liquid fertilizers. You guys started talking about ProGerminator and SureK on the show a few years ago.
But I was skeptical.
You're always skeptical.
Should Brian be skeptical of agro-liquid fertilizers? Find out at www.farmguytv.com.
For lower costs and higher production, Mandaco leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier and less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
Darren and I have gotten a lot of questions this summer about drainage because, of course, it was so wet this summer, Darren,
yeah.
that we got to improve drainage.
We had 3 or 4 extra drops that came once or twice, I guess.
When it comes to drainage, the last probably half dozen years, wouldn't you say, it's been really bad across much of the country, and a lot of farmers have been trying to improve drainage with tiling and ditching, land leveling that some guys will do. The biggest thing I guess we wanted to get into today was tiling. It's a great practice. This is an excellent fall to get it done. You probably have lots of time to do it, but we wanted to talk about drought and how that's impacted with tiling, and also what spacings should you have your tile at?
Well, first of all, Brian, I think this was an eye-opening year for a lot of guys because we had severe drought and there were areas in fields and even whole fields in certain parts of the country that the yield was zero. But what's interesting is in central South Dakota this year on one of my trips mid-summer, I was looking at this field and I thought, well, wow, that area is completely dead. Wait a minute, it's dead from too much water that it got in April and May. The farmer had already planted the crop. They got one rain. It was probably the last rain they got all summer. Well, that one rain sat there for just a few extra days and it was enough to kill the plants in that little area. It was actually one of his best yielding parts of the field.
Normally.
Well then, later on in the summer, I noticed, oh, now his hilltops died because of drought. So his low ground died because of flooding, and his hilltops died because of drought in the same year. Well, if he would have had good drainage in those low areas, you can only believe that he would have had great crop in the low areas with plentiful heat and plentiful moisture, but yet we lost those areas. So it's something that's going to get lost for some guys that weren't really paying attention to small areas in their fields that, oh, I guess it was zero, it was because of the drought. No, in many cases it was because there was too much water early in the season.
So a lot of people just start thinking, oh, there's nothing much you can do about Mother Nature. You know, dry year, wet year, whatever, nothing much you can do about that. There's a lot you can do about that as a farmer. So to begin with, on the dry side of things, you want to make sure that you have your roots going deep. Well, your roots are not going to grow into a water table, and every spring through much of the Midwest we have high water tables. Maybe it doesn't last long, maybe it only lasts for a month or a month and a half or something, but the point is those roots grow down fast. And if those roots in the first couple of weeks are already a foot deep, foot and a half deep, and your water table's at that level, well, that's it. Your roots are done growing down. Now they're going to start growing sideways. And when they grow sideways, does that do us a lot of good in a drought year? No, it sure doesn't. Okay, let's talk about the wet year. The reason why we want to get this tiling done now is so we're ready to go when the wet year comes. Because don't ever forget, the tile isn't going to hurt you at all in a dry year. When tile runs is when the water table gets above the level of the tile line. A lot of people think that water comes in from the top into these tile lines. That's not the case. It comes in from the bottom. Okay, well in a drought year, is the water table at 2 feet deep? No, the water table's at 7 feet deep in a drought year. So is your tile line even running? No, it's not. even if you get a rain, even if you get a 4-inch rain, the odds are your water table isn't going to go from 7 feet deep all the way up to 3 feet deep where your tile's at, just like that. So it's nothing to worry about in a drought year, but you want to get the work done now because you can go into just about any area on your farm. It's easy to get through, you have traction, you have time to get it done this fall. You're not getting a lot of opposition from downstream neighbors because obviously there's no water that's even going to come out of your tile this year.
One thing too, Brian, that I like that you said there is you need that root system to get established early in the season. And even on a dry year like this, driving across Minnesota, you could see exactly where the tile lines were. We had better crop right over those tile lines even on a drought year. And I had a number of guys say, you know, when I saw my yield on my yield monitor right over those tile lines, it was great. And then when they got off the side of that and in between their tile runs, the yields kind of tailed off there. Then they started picking back up when they got over that next tile line. And what they're figuring out is, you know what? 100-foot spacing just isn't enough when you've got heavy soils. You've got to be closer together.
Well, yeah, but that's the big question that we get is what should my spacing be on tile? How close together should those lines be? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what that exact number is. I just know this as a general statement. The heavier your ground is, the closer together those lines need to be. The more water you want to get rid of more quickly, the closer together your lines need to be. And also, if you're going to have your lines shallow, then they have to be closer together.
Okay, now hold on here, because one of the things that a lot of guys say is, well, man, Brian, that's going to cost me a lot of money. I think I'm going to spread mine out a little further, and maybe I'll put a 5-inch line in instead of a 4-inch line, for example.
No.
Or maybe I'll go 6 inches deeper in the soil, and that way it'll draw from a little wider path.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. And I shouldn't just make a blanket statement. Some people might need to do that. But what we want to try to do with drainage is have good, even, consistent drainage across the field. And we want to get that water out as soon as possible. And there's no need to lower the water table down to 6 feet in most cases. And let's say you're the lowest field in the whole county and everybody's water runs to you, then maybe you want to have that extra capacity and go down to 6 feet. But in a lot of ground in the Dakotas and Minnesota and even northern Iowa and places that there's a lot of tile being put in, you don't need to be 6 feet deep. You don't even need to be 4 feet deep. If you're 3 feet deep, that's probably good enough. And to have the lines at 30 feet apart, maybe 40 feet apart with 4-inch lines, that's a much smarter use of your money than having 5-inch lines at 4 or 5 feet deep further apart.
Well, the other thing there for our farm, we just don't see the purpose of going down 4 or 5 feet deep. Why do we want that water table that far away from our root system? We only need about 3 feet, and we've got plenty of area for our roots to grow as long as we can keep enough oxygen in the soil instead of having it completely filled with water.
But, I mean, this is totally a personal preference kind of deal. So if you really believe that you need your water table down at 5 or 6 feet, you know what? You can sure do that. I just know that on my farm, I don't need to get rid of that much water. I don't want to get rid of that much water. I want my lines at 3 feet deep as much as I can. But again, as a general statement, the heavier your soil, the closer together your lines need to be, and the deeper you're going to go, the further apart your lines can be. So in a lot of cases on our farm, we're running our lines at 30 to 50 feet apart in relatively heavy ground at about 3 feet deep.
The other thing too, as far as the cost goes, you say, well, I don't know if I want to be that shallow and that close together. As Brian mentioned, we're getting by with 4-inch tile, and we really don't see a big difference between 4-inch and 5-inch in terms of silting in and the lifespan of that tile line.
Well, there's going to be some difference, but it's not that dramatic if you do this right.
Yeah, it's not going to be a huge amount. And really, if you're going to put more lines out, if you can do a lot of the work yourself, it really isn't that much added expense when you're putting tile in yourself. The cost of physically putting it in is pretty low. It's just the cost of the tile itself that's going to really add up for you over time.
Well, once again, there are a lot of different things you can look at with tile, and I know that, yes, it's been a drought year in most areas of the country, so you might say, oh, I don't know if I want to do that this year. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Why to put tile in a drought year? Well, you got to be thinking ahead and just look at it on your farm and say, hey, these tile lines are going to last me 50 to 80 years probably. Chances are in the next 50 to 80 years, you're going to have enough years where the water table is high, and it's going to do you a lot of good. It is going to make a difference for yield.
Well, one other thing that'll make a big difference for yield is keeping our weed of the week out of the field. Can you identify this week's weed?
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is ahead above the rest.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
You can't fill a barrel any fuller than its lowest stave, and your crops can't do any better than the nutrient that's in shortest supply. Your yield potential is only as good as the weakest nutrient in your fertilizer program. Give your crops more than just NPK. Prescription apply all the micronutrients your crop needs, each one customized for your crop's potential. MicroLink, linking yield to potential.
Harvest season will soon be over, but don't put away your equipment until you bring it into Titan Machinery, your Case IH dealer. Take advantage of our Uptime Maintenance program. Uptime is Titan's preventative maintenance service designed to eliminate costly downtime during the short working season. Our technicians average more than 10 years of experience and use a comprehensive checklist to find problems before they slow you down. Call Titan Machinery today to schedule your Uptime service so you can spend the winter worry-free. Titan Machinery and Case IH. Better solutions.
All right, Darren, let's talk about phosphorus. The most important thing you need to do on your farm to begin with is do some soil tests. And there are going to be two different phosphorus tests you'll look at, the Bray test and the Olsen test. What do those numbers mean?
Well, historically, we like to look at the Bray test when we've got more of an acid soil. If we've got a 7 pH or lower, we think the Bray tests are a little bit more accurate.
But there are two different Bray tests.
There are actually two different Bray tests. There's a P1 and a P2. The P2 tells you the total amount of phosphorus out in the soil. The P1 tells you how much you can extract this year. So you've got kind of available phosphorus in the P1, total phosphorus in the P2. With the Olsen test, we find that to be more accurate in pHs 7.0 and above. So if you have a higher soil pH, we like the Olsen test, and that Olsen test is going to tell you available phosphorus for this year's crop.
Okay, then as a general rule, if you have a 6-inch soil test, you can basically just multiply that number you got times 2 to tell you approximate pounds per acre. So if your Olsen test, for example, says you have 20 parts per million available, you have about 40 pounds per acre available.
Well, that's true, you've got that, but you also have organic matter that's going to break down throughout the growing season. And typically for every 1% of organic matter you have in your soil, you're going to get 4 to 7 pounds of phosphate that's going to release from that organic matter that you get for free. So let's just say that you had a 4% organic matter soil. Well, 4 times 4 would be at least 16 pounds of phosphorus that's going to come available. And if we had a fantastic year where we have plentiful moisture, plentiful heat, you may get 7 pounds phosphate coming out of each percentage of organic matter in your soil. So on a 4% organic matter soil, you may get as much as 28 pounds of phosphate that's going to come for free from your organic matter.
So those are the two factors that we want to start looking at. You've got the Bray or Olsen test and whatever's in your soil basically in terms of availability. You've got organic matter that's going to release, and then if we're going to put phosphorus on, there's something called tie-up that we worry about. So what is tie-up exactly?
Well, here's what happens in your soil. If you put a whole bunch of phosphate out this year and you planted corn and you were hoping for 200 bushel corn, you put plenty of phosphorus fertilizer out there to get 200 bushel corn, and all of a sudden you get 100 bushel corn. Well, you've got extra phosphorus that you applied. The problem is if you have a soil that's high in calcium, for example, that calcium may bind with the phosphate and tie it up chemically. So when you have that kind of situation happening, yeah, you may have lots of phosphorus in your soil, but your plant can't get it. The same thing happens in an acid soil. You may have compounds with aluminum in them that may bind up with that phosphorus and make it unavailable for the plant. So you may have phosphorus out there, but is it available?
But the thing is, this doesn't happen a year later, 2 years later after you put the phosphorus out. This literally could happen a few days later, a few weeks after you put phosphorus out. So that's why a lot of people are asking about products that can help keep phosphorus available. So what are we talking about there?
Well, of course, we're talking about the product Avail for one. And Avail is a product that's been out for a number of years, has a lot of proven research data to show that it keeps more of your phosphorus fertilizer available for plants. So it protects it against this chemical tie-up that can happen in your soils. There are other products out there like Pro Germinator is a liquid product that has phosphorus in a source that also is protected from tie-ups.
And then there are also biological products that farmers are using to help get that phosphorus back into solution. And just understand, plants realize this is all going on. They put chemicals out into the soil to try to make those nutrients come back available again. It's just they're not very good at it in some cases, especially in real high or real low pH soils.
Well, there's a couple other things to mention too. If you're putting on manure this fall, I hope you consider more than manure fertilizer. We're using that on our farm for the first time this year. We're excited to see what kind of data we get.
Well, there are other products too when it comes to keeping the manure available rather than losing it to the air or losing it to tie-up.
Also, if you've got some carryover phosphorus out in your field that you want to try and extract from the soil, you may not be able to do it chemically or with the acids that your roots are going to excrete, but you may be able to do it with enzymes. If you use seed treatments like Quick Roots, for example, that has an enzymatic effect out in the soil to try and make nutrients available. There's a lot of new things coming, so keep your eyes out for those.
But the biggest thing that we encourage you to do is don't just listen to what we're telling you here. Try some of these things on your own farm. I can just tell you on our farm, we were having so many problems with phosphorus. And you know, part of the cause was we were doing a lot of broadcasting. We used to do a lot of broadcasting. The more we started banding, keeping our phosphorus in a concentrated band, especially in these tough soils, we were able to extract more that year rather than extracting it 5 or 10 years down the road. But you can do whatever you want to do. All I'm encouraging you to do is try some different things on your farm, because phosphorus, you just have to have availability of that if you want top yields.
Well, there sure are a lot of things to think about with phosphorus in terms of reading that soil test and understanding the difference between the Bray test that we find more accurate in low pH or the Olsen test that we believe is more accurate in the high pH soils. And then the fertilizer sources that you have, there's a lot of different ways to protect that phosphorus from tie-up in your soil. Just utilize some new things on your farm to try and make your fertilizer available and hopefully make you more money this year.
Well, another thing that'll make you more money is if you can control our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to do it on your farm coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Mandaco.
For lower costs and higher production, Mandaco leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
Our Weed of the Week is yellow nutsedge, and this is a tough one, Darren, because I really confused this when I was a kid. I thought it was grass. And so I know a lot of farmers think that too. Well, when you first take a look at it, it looks like a grass. You go spray a grass herbicide, and it doesn't work. And you say, hey, what's wrong with my grass herbicide? Well, there's nothing wrong with your grass herbicide. It's just not a grass you're trying to control. It's a sedge.
Yeah, it's a different class of weeds than a broadleaf weed or a grass weed. So you have to treat it a little different. Now, some of the herbicides that you're going to use may also control some grasses or some broadleaves, but you have to be really selective because there aren't a lot of products that are very good on yellow nutsedge.
Oh, before we get to that though, to identify yellow nutsedge, just look for a three-sided, something that looks like a grass, okay? It's got 3 sides though.
3 sides to the stem. So when
Yes.
you roll the stem between your fingers, it actually has it's a triangular stem.
Yeah.
It's unusual.
So anyway, this weed is really difficult to control. But there are some products that are pretty good. Surprisingly, Dual is not too bad. Otherwise, we're talking Permit or Basagran. Now, if you're gonna go out there with Roundup, well, Roundup's not real great, but we have seen some guys who've had good control if they use the maximum labeled rate and the minimum amount of water that you can possibly legally use. Do that, because then you have very concentrated droplets. This yellow nutsedge, it's got waxy leaves, so it's hard to stick any product on there.
Well, it's mainly found in low areas of the field, so improving your drainage is a great way to keep yellow nutsedge out. And tillage works as well. You can certainly do some tillage through those areas. That'll hold it back. It won't completely wipe it out. But improve your drainage, use the herbicides Brian talked about, or if you need more advice, just check out our Ag PhD Field Guide app. We've got more tips on controlling yellow nutsedge.
Yeah, and that's available for iPhones and I think iPads now too, right, Darren?
Very good, Brian.
Well, that's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The world of farming is changing.
From the power and versatility of Steiger and Magnum tractors to the legendary reliability of axial flow combines, Case IH can help you be ready. To learn more, visit caseih.com/be ready.
When it comes to spreading lime, how important is a uniform application? We'll discuss in today's Iron Talk. If your soil pH is low, by all means lime it, raise that soil pH. The biggest thing that it's going to do for you is improving the nutrient availability out in your fields. However, if your application is not made correctly and your lime is not spread evenly, you could run into some problems with nutrient availability. Just exactly the thing that you're trying to overcome by putting on the lime. So when you're spreading your lime, be very cautious. If you're using pelletized lime, a spinner spreader will work just fine, an air spreader will work just fine. Pelletized lime is no problem. It's the ag lime that's a challenge. You've got to spread that fairly evenly across your field, or you're going to tie up some potassium, you're going to tie up zinc, you're going to have other nutrients that just are not available when you overload the calcium. So be cautious when you're spreading lime. Hey, it's great that you're going to raise your pH. Just make sure that it's uniform across your field, or you will just negate all the good things that you're trying to accomplish with the lime. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
It takes a whole team of people to record a song. Hey everybody, I'm Steve Azar, singer-songwriter and recording artist. I'd like you to meet Mike Larson, an attorney at Swinson Investments and Commodities.
Like recording a hit country song, it takes a team to put together a good farm estate plan. I work with you, your attorneys, your bankers, and your advisors. What are my chances of touring with you?
About as good as growing a head of hair. Call Mike Larson at Swinson Investments and Commodities.
Everything is better to the power of Nutrisphere N. Proven to shield against leaching, volatilization, and denitrification, Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager helps you maximize the efficiency of your nitrogen applications. In fact, research shows that in 184 corn trials, Nutrisphere N increases yields by an average of 13.2 bushels per acre. Do the math for yourself. Contact your local fertilizer dealer today and take your operation to the power of Nutrisphere N.
Case IH set the standard for improving power and fuel economy with SCR technology, while others were still trying to decide what the standard was. Only efficient power from Case IH is proven in the field 10,000 times over. And you'll find it in all our high horsepower equipment, from tractors to combines to sprayers. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
To learn more about how you can be ready with the proven leader, visit caseih.com/efficient-power.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
Introducing the all-new Backsaver Swing Hopper Auger Mover. Backsavers have interchangeable parts which allows you easy access to move or swing your augers to fit your harvesting needs. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Weed of the Week, Iron Talk, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Can you increase your field's topsoil layer by reducing tillage, planting high residue crops, utilizing cover crops, and adding manure to the soil? Topsoil can be rebuilt. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.